Hello, hello. Let me get my guest on. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. Really exciting show today. We're going to be talking about smart legal contracts. I have my guest today, John Carpenter, joining us. Hi, John.
Hey Nnamdi, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. What about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Just trying to keep on top of everything. So
I,
great.
I, I love it. I love it. Um, Let me read John's extensive bio, and then we will get into the show. John Carpenter is the Chief Operating Officer of Pinnacle, a leading e-commerce company and co-founder of both the Global Blockchain Summit. John is a frequent blockchain speaker, educator, and consultant. As the co-founder of the Global Blockchain Summit, John has been actively involved in providing a strong forum for enterprise blockchain projects since 2017. John is an active contributor to and current co-chair of the Hyperledger Learning Materials Development Working Group, contributor to the Hyperledger Marketing and Developer Relations Committee, and he runs the Denver Hyperledger Meetup Group. John serves on the Accord Project Technical Working Group as a contributor. The Accord Project is a Linux Foundation open source project that is focused on the development of natural language legal smart contracts that can primarily be deployed to the Hyperledger fabric. Recently, John collaborated with Hyperledger and other organizers around launching a Hyperledger career fair, which brought together Hyperledger member companies with qualified job candidates via a four-part employment series. Also want to mention John is an attorney as well. Um, John, thanks for being a guest on the show. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, Nnamdi, it's always great to collaborate with you, and it's wonderful to be a part of your nice podcast here.
I appreciate that. So, folks, today's topic is on smart legal contracts and how they're revolutionizing the industry. We're going to really jump into it. But, John, before everyone who's tuned in to the show before, we cover current news articles that we found interested, and then we transition into the topic of the day. So, the first article that we will cover, let me bring this up, get John's take on it. So the first one that we're going to cover is the a Visa deal. So Visa recently invested in a fintech startup called Deserve to drive the adoption of crypto powered cards. So essentially, you use their credit card and you get crypto rewards. I think it's credit. They're offering a credit card as a service feature, and they're saying it's the world's first credit card with crypto rewards. Um, they partnered with Visa's team collaborated with BlockFi and Deserve to launch a crypto rewards credit card that would appeal to crypto enthusiasts and introduce crypto to the masses. The BlockFi Bitcoin rewards credit card has been an immediate success from what they're saying. Deserve was founded in 2013. So just wanted to kind of get John's take on that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Nnamdi. So, in my role as the Chief Operating Officer of Pinnacle Cart, we deal with, hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions that are flowing through our system. And really what we're doing is trying to ride along with the wave of the cryptocurrency adoption as well. And I think what Visa's doing, as well as what MasterCard just announced as far as their loyalty points that they're using crypto in, is going to be the future of payments. And even what we're seeing is, beyond stable coins, which I think is the easiest use case, being able to pay using central bank digital currencies going forward is really going to be an adoption point for the e-commerce ecosystem.
And for those that don't know, stable coins basically are matched to a particular currency. So in most cases, it's the US dollar. And in that case, obviously with other cryptos like blockchain, Ethereum, as you see, very volatile, it fluctuates. Stable coin, that's the name of it. It remains pretty like a one-to-one correlation. Thanks for that, John. Let's move on to the next article. So this week, and we're going to go into to Sheba actually, but this week, crypto wallet Coinbase, it basically went offline. and users were not able to trade. That happened on Wednesday. The market this week was extremely volatile. They just added Sheba. That's going to be our next topic. And sites go down all the time, and I want to kind of get your take on this. In May 2000 last year, Robinhood suffered a 2 days outage, causing some customers to lose money, and there was a class action lawsuit because of that. I want to kind of get your opinion on when these outages happen, especially exchanges like this. Do you see potential of that?
Yeah, I think that the outages are a natural outgrowth of unexpected access to the system. So, when we had Robinhood go out, that was basically because of the meme stocks, and the volume of trading that was on the platform was unexpected. And then, there's other things where, if a backbone of the internet goes out, then of course it's going to take, major sites like even Facebook offline. And Facebook just, suffered an outage there, which impacted, small and medium-sized enterprises as well. But for Coinbase to go offline, it's the same story. Is what is their, expected uptime, and how does that affect their customer base when they can't get in to do trading, which is obviously a big issue if you're an active trader in the cryptocurrency space. So I think they're going to have to really adjust these, capacity models to accommodate, surge trading or surge access. And then they're also really going to have to build in the resiliency to say, okay, if one portion of the backbone goes offline, how can we make the internet resilient for our user base really to stay up and have, 24/7, 4 nines uptime for their website?
I mean, great take. I'm definitely also just curious about the class action lawsuit potential because people could potentially lose money if you're an active crypto trader. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're really going to have to look at, proximate cause. And basically what they would want to look at is, was there causality between losses, and if those losses were lack of access to a trading platform, were there any alternatives? So a lot of times the brokerages will say, well, if you can't get access via the web, call into our customer support number, and then we'll be able to handle that, trade for you. But a lot of times, how it goes is they only have so many customer support staff available. So you might be in the, phone queue for a long time. So yeah, there will definitely be some class action suits that come out of that. And it'll just be a function of, can you prove actual and proximate damages?
Oh, good point. Last article of the day, and a major was in the news. We're gonna go into this article in Sheba. So, Sheba, I knew is basically a cryptocurrency token. It's been in the news all week because it was listed on Coinbase about I think a few weeks ago and exploded. So, interesting article that I found was it was a wallet that they found that purchased invested 8,000 last August, and today it's worth $5.7 billion. So understand, right? When you buy crypto, it's an address that's associated and it's basically public. So they might not know they might not be able to tie your name to your address, but the address can be scanned and viewed, or I think in this case it's ether scan and different tools like so. So you can see the history of transactions. So wow, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as with any market, there's always going to be speculation. And, someone who got into this cryptocurrency early had the unexpected benefit of, further adoption and other people wanting to get in on this particular coin. So, there's always going to be these things where there's great gains in certain things. And then, alternatively, we'll see where certain coins get washed out over time as well. So, it's a kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to trading cryptocurrencies.
Totally understand. We're gonna move on. So that particular currency was on Sheba, and it's really important to understand, right? That's a token. It's not necessarily a coin like a Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's based on an ERC 20 standard. That's on Ethereum side. That's created by a smart contract. If you can see on the screen, they even have the contract address. And I wanted to now kind of start diving into our topic of the day, which is smart legal contracts. And you know, I wanted to make the correlation between Sheba and how it was basically created by a smart contract, but then there's a difference. So at this point, I'm going to get rid of the share screen. And I would like John to really jump into smart legal contracts and the difference between smart contracts. Also, if you have any questions, comments whatsoever, we stream live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. And also, we just launched our new website, the techbehindfintech.com, and you can watch the show live on our website. And I'll put the website in the comments. But to John, please, let's talk through it. The differences and of a smart contract, what that is, and also the smart legal contract, and dive into it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to do that, Nnamdi. And so basically, my background as an attorney and also working a lot in the title insurance industry, I've been well exposed to the value of where I see the digital document space going. And so early on, I got involved with the Accord project, and really their mission is to revolutionize how the legal document framework is used going forward. And the good thing about the Accord project is it kind of takes the legal side equation and puts it together with the technology side equation. So if I sit down with an attorney and go through what I'd say kind of a top level natural language legal smart contract under the Accord project, they'll pretty much get it and be able to read that contract and understand it and understand how that contract's going to operate. Whereas if I take when we publish it using like Cicero or Ergo, which are components of the Accord project, down into a smart contract code base, then I can take that over to a developer and they can easily say, okay, well, here's the logic that's embedded into that code, and here's how it's going to execute from a, quote unquote, smart contract from their perspective. And so I think one of the challenges here is the future of legal agreements. I see, Nnamdi, is going in the direction of the Accord project. And it's a function of making it usable by law firms and the attorneys, yet being fully capable of executing the code that is really going to bring out the efficiency. And I'll give you a good example of the efficiency, Nnamdi. So, if I have to have an import-export agreement and I'm sending over a invoice to you and to your accounting department to pay based on the shipments of goods, then that's a long, drawn-out process. And really, trade finance is a great use case for blockchain, because if you can prove that the goods were shipped in a timely manner and there was no issues, let's say, with temperature for an IoT tracker or anything else like that, then by virtue of the smart contract, you can get paid immediately, and it can really accelerate the velocity of money flowing through trade finance.
So, for our audience, there's a lot of different terms, because some may not be have a technical background. So with that trade finance use case that you put forth, right? You're shipping something and it's temperature sensitive. So and we're talking about IoT, we mean the Internet of Things. So that means there will be some sort of device in that packaging that's basically sending a signal back to a source system saying, okay, here's the current temperature. And if there's some sort of discrepancy or it drops below, it'll invoke one of the clauses in the contract. And now there could be some sort of payment remittance or something like that. So with this smart legal contract that John's talking about, there's various technical components that are also external to the contract that I think we might name from a blockchain perspective called oracles. But let's just say you have different external systems that it's feeding information back to this contract. And the one thing that's different, and just jump in anytime, John, is we're going from a static contract to something that is extremely dynamic right now. So for attorneys that may be watching that are not technical, can you really just go through how that world is changing?
Yeah, Nnamdi. So you hit the nail on the head when you talk about dynamic versus static. And I will say that all the attorneys out there will completely understand the static contract model. And a dynamic contract, we're talking about oracles that you mentioned, which is really external data sources that you're relying on to execute your contract. And really, there's two types of oracles there, Nnamdi. One is, a distributed oracle that uses a blockchain, and it's the same type of framework as a smart contract where you have distributed consensus. Everyone agrees on what the data is in the oracle. And the other type of oracle is really just, a single source, trusted source for an oracle. And I'll give you a good example, and I know all the attorneys that would be watching this would understand this. But in the federal court system, there is a system called the PACER system. And the PACER system, Nnamdi, is really what they use to track all federal cases that are filed. And a good example from a smart contract is if, let's say, we're going to transfer funds from company A to company B, but what we find out is that company A just filed for bankruptcy under the federal bankruptcy code, then actually they would be restricted from transferring money to company B because of the federal bankruptcy code, and they'd have to seek, leave from the bankruptcy code to take care of that dynamic contract, whereas the dynamic contract might have to check the oracle of the PACER system to see if the company filed for bankruptcy.
In that scenario, how is it done now without the oracle? Like so with the example you just mentioned, right? They end up in a PACER system that they file for bankruptcy. We have a static contract. How would an attorney right now go about getting that information to stop payment? Like, how does that work now without the smart legal contract?
Yeah, so right now what it would be is, Nnamdi, there would be an attorney that is representing the debtor, which would be company A. They would file the petition with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, and then at that point, they would go ahead and take full inventory and tell the accounting department and the CFO to stop all payments until there was relief from the bankruptcy court to be able to pay priority creditors. And so the thing is, in the bankruptcy court, Nnamdi, there is, secured creditors, which always will have priority over unsecured creditors. And let's just say this company B is actually an unsecured creditor. If the CFO or the attorney allowed the payment to an unsecured creditor in priority over a secured creditor, that would be, frowned upon by the bankruptcy court, and they would have to unwind that transaction. That would not be allowed. But if you have a smart contract that goes out to an unsecured creditor and there's no intervention by, the CFO and the bankruptcy court, that could self-execute, and you're now in violation of the bankruptcy code because you paid an unsecured creditor without seeking relief from the bankruptcy court to do so.
Understand. We have a question from an audience member. Let me add that to our screen. From Mirko. Thanks for also watching, Mirko, and thanks for your questions. We always love them. John, will this e-signature be obsolete with the smart contract, as individual codes forming the smart contract represent the unique signature? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think great question, Mirko. And so let's just talk about that. So the Accord project team, what I would say more of the commercial side of that is called Clause.io. And recently they were actually acquired by none other than DocuSign. And everyone's familiar with DocuSign having to execute digital signed agreements. And so what I see is there's going to really be two things you're going to have to look at here. One is DIDs, which are decentralized identification. And then there's actually, stamping the document as being signed. So Mirko, I see that this is going to be an evolution where you're going to have a decentralized ID, whether that's issued by the government or some other authoritative body, and then be able to take that decentralized ID and stamp it as being your e-signature on that date, and then using those e-signatures to say, okay, let's start executing this smart contract, like something that would come out of the Accord project.
That I didn't know about the decentralized ID. That's interesting. One of the questions I have, so as reading it and reading some things around the Accord project, and I want to also for the audience differentiating between a smart legal contract and a smart contract. Can you paint that picture and help us differentiate? Because we sometimes use them interchangeably, but there is a difference in my understanding. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There is a differentiation between the two, Nnamdi, and I would say the differentiation between a smart contract that we're all familiar with, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem, is, that's very code driven, whereas a smart legal contract is more of almost a layered solution where you have some of this attorney natural language at the top, and then you also integrate the code into it as well. So I would say that a smart legal contract is more complex and has an additional layer associated with it than strictly an Ethereum smart contract that one would just say, here's code execution that's going to be based on this event happening.
There's a thing that we use when you talk about smart contracts, and especially in the Ethereum space, code is law.
Oh, yeah.
How does that apply to smart legal contracts?
Yeah, that is any attorney that's watching this will say no, code is never law. Law is law. All code has to comply with the law. And I'd say that's a good example, Nnamdi, what I was talking about the bankruptcy court and violating the automatic stay under the bankruptcy code. If any smart contract does that, they're violating federal bankruptcy law. The other thing is in real estate, if you're going to do a foreclosure, and let's say that you are a person that's serving active duty in the military, you have to check with all of the military branches to see and make sure that if I'm going to foreclose on your property, that you're not on active duty in the military service. Because if you are, I cannot foreclose on your property. And that's the Service Members Civil Relief Act, and they've updated that. And that is protection for active duty service members. So, these are just a couple of examples of where law is law and code is not law. Because if you have this code and you're not thinking about how that's going to work in the real legal world, you're going to get yourself into legal trouble by executing something that doesn't pass muster for how the legal system operates.
Another thing that I read within the core project, some people, regardless of if it's a smart contract that's digital, are still addicted to seeing something in like a PDF or printable format. So another thing that it does is you can print these things out or make PDF files of the contract in natural language, but they specifically say that's not the contract, right? So, like, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and that's a severe challenge, Nnamdi. So any attorney practicing law has to be an expert in an area that they're advising a client on. And so one of the other challenges that I see with respect to the natural language smart contracts under the Accord project is, how technically sophisticated does the attorney need to be when they have a code that's dependent for the contract, in addition to the natural language that the attorney fully understands completely. And I think that we're going to get into situations going forward with malpractice insurance wanting to look at this, is that, you're familiar with the DAO hack of Ethereum way back when, right?
In 16.
Yep. And so the thing is, Nnamdi, it's the same thing, is if an attorney writes a natural language smart contract that's a blockchain smart contract, and lo and behold, there's some software hack on that, who is responsible for that? Because what happens is the client has an unintended outcome because of a hack of a contract that was supposed to be done by an attorney that was buttoned down from a legal perspective. Does that make sense? So it's going to create some interesting issues that the court system's going to have to grapple with, and there's going to have to be legislation that's going to be focused on that, and there's going to be case law that's really coming out around that exact issue.
You know what? That really opens up a ton of other questions and observations, because I mean, look at the medical field, right? So you have an operation that goes wrong, right? And there's people in risk management now. They have to basically now deal with the outcome of that, and
Sure.
that impacts the doctor's malpractice. And looking at this, it's like, were the necessary steps taken? Did you do a smart contract audit? What type of security, like prior to releasing the contract to the client, right? What were some of the practices that were like what happened? What were some of the steps that were done to ensure security? So I still, from a technology standpoint, I see a partnership with the attorneys in this space, right? Because there's you still have to deploy it, you still have to secure it, and then are you waiting until the end of the contract to secure it, or you start the security practices, what we call shift left, in the beginning? So there's a lot of, I definitely see some sort of partnership arrangement, or maybe if you look at a bigger law firms having their technology team in half, but it has to be working hand in hand with the attorney. We have a question from the audience. Shanka, oh, thanks for joining, old colleague of mine. I heard a perspective where if crypto crashes to zero tomorrow, nothing has really changed in the world compared to an MSFT or like stocks like Apple crashes to zero. Given that, what would you expect to happen if governments adopt the Chinese position and ban crypto, causing it to crash?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be countries around the world, like El Salvador adopted Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and China basically chased out all of their crypto miners recently. But Bitcoin, it took a little bit of a dive for a while people were digesting that all the miners weren't going to be. There was a high percentage of the miners that were actually in China at one point in time. But now the world adjusted to that, and really the mining now is outside of China. So I think that, individual sovereign governments may make policies that are pro cryptocurrency and against cryptocurrency, but the space I don't see as being able to be, completely taken out, because there's too many sovereign countries, and there's a clear understanding of the store value of cryptocurrencies, that it'll just be, a moving target over time.
No, definitely. Thank you for the question. And please, folks, any other questions, please chat them in. I want to ask you now, with all of these advances coming in, the innovations of smart legal contracts and so forth, where do you see, obviously we're the Tech Behind FinTech. We talk about, every FinTech needs have contracts, law, like different things that happen with it. That's why I wanted to talk about this. Where do you see us in oh wait, before I jump into that, I always like answering audience questions first. So I'll ask my question afterwards. From Matt Cook, what do you see incentivizing governments to start accepting, acknowledging smart legal contracts versus the traditional method? Is there a revenue opportunity in there for them?
Yeah, I think that the revenue opportunity is for states that are very innovative, like the state of Wyoming is really trying to become the blockchain capital of the United States. And so what they do is they continue to pass legislation, and they set up these speedy banks, which are really catering to the crypto community. And I think it's very much along the lines of what Delaware did way back a long time ago with corporate law and corporate filings. And basically Delaware said, well, the thing we're going to really be good at is incorporation of companies in Delaware, and really having a separate court system that's all about addressing corporate litigation cases. So the incentive is really attracting business and attracting corporate filings. And I think that the state of Wyoming has really done a great job of doing that. And they have an active blockchain task force in Wyoming even today.
And if I'm not mistaken, right, Wyoming, they were the first to make the DAO, a decentralized organization, legal, right? That was the first state to do so. I think we talked about this a few months ago.
Yeah, and I would say really their innovations in the banking space have been the most impactful.
Wow.
And there was a time, Nnamdi, when a lot of the cryptocurrency companies would have the banks shut them down because they didn't want to be, having any touch to the cryptocurrency industry because of the, issues associated with, KYC, AML, and other issues that they didn't like. But the speedy banks that Wyoming has done has really been, trying to attract that capital to Wyoming versus going to any other state, because that's more of a safe haven for the blockchain companies to have their money on deposit with these speedy banks.
It's interesting. It's my first time I'm hearing about that, so I want to definitely do some research on that.
Sure.
A few questions. And I want to be respectful of your time. I'm an attorney, whether working for us in the fintech side or in general. I'm not as familiar with smart legal contracts, or I'm not that technical. What are some of the steps that I can take to start preparing myself for where things are going?
Yeah, to really get an understanding of how the industry is going to go in the future, what I would do is I just recommend you go out to accordproject.org and take a look at just some of the documentation in there just to kind of see how the industry is going to be heading. And then if you're really a person that likes the Ethereum ecosystem, there is a direct peer, which is called OpenLaw. And if you go out to openlaw.io, you can take a look at their implementation of the same framework. And the other thing too is to keep in mind, if they really want to kind of get up to speed and stay with the industry, there's other groups like the Global Blockchain Business Council, GBBC, that they can get involved with. And there's a lot of good work being done by GBBC around, how the industry is heading and really trying to formulate standards.
So what I'm going to do is, first, I'm going to put the link to the Accord project in chat. So everyone on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook should get it. LinkedIn, for you guys, I'm going to put it in the video. So it's part of the video now. You'll see it there.
Yep.
Next, John mentioned for the Ethereum side, I think you could just go to Openlord as it's spelled, .com.
It's .io, openlaw.io.
You know what? That's a good point. Let me go to that website right now and let me put it in the actually met the founder, the CEO at it was at a conference at their at a university he teaches at in New York, and some of his members. It was I think I have a picture from like 2 years ago. It was pretty cool. He's a cool guy. Yeah, let me put that. Let me get that on so I want to make sure we want to go to the right place. 1 second. And next, I have a question for you afterwards. I want to kind of focus. Let me just put this on first. Openlord.io. Okay, it's posted. We're gonna now put it up for our LinkedIn people. Second on that. Yep, it's openlord.io. See it there. Next, in general housekeeping stuff. We just launched our new website, the Tech Behind FinTech. Please visit the site and put your email in so we can keep you updated on our upcoming shows and events. We put that on. And the techbehindfintech.com, so you can see it on the screen. The last question I have for you, and John, can you paint a picture for us? We're right now in this year is 2021. It's 2030, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you see transactions? Paint that use case in that scenario, how you envision it, based on the work you're doing, everything that you know. And give some people some background. John and I work together on a professional organization called the Cloud Security Alliance and on certain blockchain security initiatives and things of that nature. So that's our connection, and I'm happy I was able to get him on the show. So, and he's obviously from his bio, very well connected in the blockchain space, and obviously smart legal contracts and so forth. Very knowledgeable. Do me a favor for the audience and for myself. I always like to do this sometimes. Paint that picture. It's 2030. I'm an attorney working in fintech, doing a bunch of deals. What do you see?
Yeah. So what I see, Nnamdi, is at that point we're 9 years out, and
Yep.
I would say that major law firms, and a lot of the law firms now have IT professionals that are on staff, and really running the law firm's technology side as well, and a lot of even e-discovery and preparing documents. I've talked to a lot of major law firms, and they're leveraging technology and document preparation for trial or looking through e-discovery, things like that. So I would expect the same thing with respect to these natural language smart contracts. Is by 2030 we're going to have 9 years of development under our belts. And what is going to happen, Nnamdi, I think that there's going to be major law firms that have very specialized staff that are both attorneys and technologists that
Oh, wow.
specialize in the smart legal contract framework. And so what the way that I see this going is it's going to be hand in hand and cross-functional. So let's just say that I'm an attorney and you're a technologist. And I
Yep.
think what's going to happen is that these smart contracts are going to become much more ubiquitous, especially for large organizations that include supply chain or trade finance or government documents that need to take place, or even like on R3 Corda, a lot of these bond execution and settlement are all going to be around natural language legal smart contracts. But what's going to happen is it's going to be the attorney is really going to handle the legal portion of this, and then once the attorney is done with their side of it, then the technologist is going to get in there and verify the code base that's been passed along to them, as far as here's the contract that has to execute. They're going to verify it, it looks sound, and then at that point then it's going to be published. But there is going to be legislation and case law about how these are interpreted. And what I see also, Nnamdi, is there's going to be a lot of statutory understanding that, in the same way as I saw how e-signatures got adopted by various states, at one point in time, e-signatures were not a valid signature, and everything had to be a wet signature on paper. But I think the same smart contracts will evolve, where they'll deal with the malpractice issues in case there's a hack, and they'll just have to show, good standards of practice with respect to the code, and then the attorney will still be on the hook for the legal interpretation. But that's how it'll go down, and it'll be primarily, I think, the bigger law firms that will be the experts in this space, because of the additional investment they'll have to make in the technologist to ride along with each one of these contracts.
Excellent. Thanks for that picture. Really interesting. We're gonna take our last question, and then we're going to close out the show. Last question from Mirko. John, what is the risk of having a smart legal contract, if any? Cybercrime, data leak, etc.
Yeah, so I would say that's a risk proposition that the parties entering into a natural language smart legal contract will have to take on, that assumption of risk. An assumption of risk is really a very well-known term in the legal industry, and that means the parties know that a dynamic contract, which Nnamdi did a perfect job of defining. It's not static, it's dynamic. Taking on that assumption that there could be a cyber attack, there could be a data leak, and in business, there's a lot of assumption of risk that's taken on by companies all the time. And I would say that there'll probably be writers on every one of these natural language smart contracts that say, the parties understand there is a possibility of a cyber attack or a code that's hackable, or there's an error in the code, and they knowingly accept the risk of this smart contract. And I think that will be almost like in the industry, they call it boilerplate, that the parties understand that there's some level of risk associated with a smart contract versus a static contract, and they're going to assume that risk. And that I think will actually move the industry forward.
Excellent. Listen, John, thank you very, very much for your time. As I do with all my guests, I said last question, but okay, Mirko's asking again. With the evolution and adoption of a smart legal contract, is not also the danger to reduce the negotiation leverage? Absolute last question.
Yeah, and I would say negotiation leverage has nothing to do with the adoption of smart contracts. It's really a function of how the contract executes dynamically, not the negotiation perspective of the parties, unless there is a party that is, always in control of, let's say, a major corporation and an individual, where that would be a little bit of, the major corporation has the ability to invest in the technologists, whereas an individual might not have to, have that ability. So I would say in general, it really is not a major effect. It's almost like today's same thing of click acceptance of contracts from big companies as well.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Mirko, and everyone for your questions. I know John has a very busy, hectic schedule and has ongoing projects going on, so I want to be very respectful of his time today. Last thing, John, like I do all the guests, please let people know how they can find you. Is there anything that you want to mention regarding projects that you're involved with or your company? Please shout them out.
Yeah. So, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Pinnacle, which is a leading e-commerce solution, and PC Magazine just rated us as an excellent e-commerce solution. So if you're interested in that, check out pinnaclecart.com. Global Blockchain Summit, I've run that for a number of years. We had to actually take that offline because of COVID, but that will be firing up again in 2022. So check out globalblockchainsummit.com. And then also, if you're interested in engaging with the Hyperledger community, check out hyperledger.org. And the Hyperledger Foundation is what they're going under as the new branding. And if you really want to get into the open source blockchain community, that's a great place to engage as well.
And if people wanted to contact you, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is probably just use my Global Blockchain Summit email, which is John, John, at globalblockchainsummit.com.
Excellent. John, once again, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate all the knowledge that you gave us today around smart legal contracts and answering all the questions and also painting the future. Really appreciate it. Folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech, live every Friday at 12 p.m. We just launched our new website. We would love to get your email addresses. This way we can keep you updated on upcoming shows, the techbehindfintech.com. You can also watch our shows live from the website directly as well. So again, thank you very much. Let me put that up. Have a great weekend, and see you next Friday at 12 p.m. Take care, John. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Nnamdi. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.